Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Lisa Millman. I am a specialist at the Family Resource Center, and we are so excited to have Kirk Martin back again from Celebrating Calm. And I'm going to let him introduce himself and get started. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to the Fairfax County Parent Resource Center. We've worked with the Parent Resource Center there for at least 15 years. And I'm not just saying this, although I would, but you guys are the best Parent Resource Center. So if you need anything, it's very professional staff with a lot of resources. So I'm going to try to give you as many tools as possible this morning. I talk kind of fast, but I wanted to start. We're going to talk about big emotions, but I want to help you understand where the big emotions come from. So let me describe, and this is kind of generic right at first, but strong-willed kids, this will describe some of your kids that are on the spectrum, neurodivergent kids, right, broadly. These kids tend to be very bright kids. They're not always academically motivated, but they're really bright. They just tend to use their intelligence to argue with you, because these are sometimes kids who are like little cops, judges, and attorneys all rolled into one little package. These are kids who, when they wake up in the morning, they have an agenda. They know what they like and they know what they don't like. And what they don't like is usually anything that you want them to do. So you're going to have power struggles with these kids over a lot of things. And when we get to the big emotions, this is part of where it comes from. When they wake up in the morning, a lot of your kids already have a vision of what they want to accomplish, what they want to do. And it's usually at odds with what you need them to do. And so I'm just going to, if you don't mind, I'm just going to throw out little things along the way that I didn't even plan on saying. But for a lot of your little kids especially, try to find a way to say yes to their vision, right, within your boundaries. So when they wake up in the morning, sometimes I will go in the room and say, what's firing in your brain already? What are you thinking about? Well, Mom, I was thinking, I really want to do X. And instead of just saying the initial, like, oh, honey, we can't do that because we have school today, we have this today, find a way to say, you know what, that's an awesome idea. I want to do that too. Now, first, here's what we need to get done. But if we get that done really quickly, oh man, we can start on that Lego project. We can start doing that. Try to find a way to say yes to things. One of our phrases is, whenever you say no to something inappropriate, always say yes to something appropriate, because these are kids who have an enormous amount of brain energy. The thing with the kids with ADHD, it is not the physical energy. That's important. And right. And I want them doing a lot of sensory exercises and taekwondo and swimming and all kinds of nice physical things that give them pressure on their bodies. Important. But it's the mental energy. It's the emotional energy that they have. And so your energy with them is actually really, really important. So you're going to have a lot of power struggles with these kids, and you're going to spend their childhood saying this: if you would just do what I asked you to do, you would be done in 7 minutes. But you'd rather argue with me for 7 hours or weeks or days or years and lose everything you own. And these kids tend not to care about consequences, right? Because that's our first go-to is, well, what consequence can we give to change this behavior? Today, I'm going to go way beyond consequences, because consequences tend not to change behavior that well. Connection, relationships change behavior. And we're going to talk about giving kids tools to succeed. We'll get to that. So these kids, a few more things about these kids. They tend to be stove touchers. They need to touch the hot stove, right? Because they want to figure it out themselves. A word I would write down is ownership. I don't give them control of my home, but I give these kids ownership over their choices within my boundaries. This is not permissive parenting, let them do whatever they want. But I want to get to where I say, look, I don't care how you get this done. I want the homework done, the chore done. These are my goals. This is my objective. This is what I want done. These are my expectations. How you get it done, I relinquish control of that. Now, it's going to be hard for some of you because you're Northern Virginia families and you all have control issues, right? And that's partly why you're so successful in life, is because you control things. But if you try to control everything that your child does, it will create more power struggles. And I don't do blame or guilt, but that's your issue. And you need to work on that as a parent, because if you just hold to that rigid kind of like, I'm the boss and they're going to do things my way, it simply will not work with a strong-willed child. I'm not giving in to what they want, but I let them do things in a way that's different than I would do it. And we'll do some examples. Let me make a note. I want to do a thing for morning routine that kind of demonstrates all these ideas that I'm talking about right now. So thank you for bearing with me. So a few other things about these kids. Let's talk about how their brains work, and then this will all lead into how to deal with the big emotions and all kinds of other things. And I'm not going to do the super scientific part of this, but here's our quick thing on how we came to this. We used to live in Loudoun County, and we worked a lot in Fairfax. And our son, Casey, who's now 30, very strong-willed and had every label you could come up with: ADD, ADHD, OCD, ODD, everything. And so we struggled with him until I finally learned how to control myself and work with his nature, work with how his brain works best. And then we decided to do something different. My wife is a therapist, but instead of bringing kids into a therapeutic office one-on-one with a strong-willed child, which has limited effectiveness at times, as many of you have found, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but just know that a lot of your kids will kind of manipulate the therapist, right? And just tell them what they want to hear, or just say, I don't know. We wanted to bring kids in our home. So we lived in a little townhome, and we'd have 8, 10, 15 kids, strong-willed kids, kids on the spectrum in our home, because what we wanted to do is put them in real life situations where I knew they would struggle, so that we could teach them how to deal with frustration and disappointment. Because most of your kids who do act out defiantly, their outward behavior is defiant at times. But I see these kids as very frustrated kids. And so if you can, what we want to do is teach them how to deal with their frustration. So here's where some of that comes from. I'm going to hit 3 kind of things that are happening inside your child's brain and heart. Number 1, many of these kids have very busy brains. If you have one of these kids, you know what I mean. Their brains are running all the time. They're very much into their ideas. Sometimes they talk real fast. They jump from one thing to another. And what it feels like is everything's out of my control. So what do you see with many of these kids? Disorganized, forgetful, executive function is sometimes difficult. They're often slow processors of information because there's so much information going on in that brain. Kids who blurt out a lot, they're not being intentionally rude. They just struggle with short-term memory, and they love their idea, and they're afraid that they're going to forget their idea, and so they just blurt out. Quick little tool, because we like to talk about tools, is this. I would love for a teacher with one of these kids to, instead of saying, and I know being a teacher is really hard now, instead of just saying, hey, you need to stop blurting out. That's rude. If you don't stop blurting out, you're going to lose recess. Instead, I come along with that child and say, you know what I love about you? You've got this amazing brain. You're an idea kid. You're like a junior Thomas Edison. All these ideas floating in your brain. You are such a good thinker. But here's what you struggle with. You struggle with short-term memory because you have all these competing ideas in your brain. So sometimes you struggle with short-term memory. And so you're sitting in my class and you get one of your ideas and you're afraid you're going to forget it. So you just blurt out. Now, it's inappropriate, and I don't want you doing that. Now, I'm going to add to this in just a second, but watch the difference. In the first way of handling, I said, hey, cut it out, you're being rude. See, I'm assigning a motive to the child's behavior that is usually wrong. And that's when these kids begin to get really upset, because now you don't understand me and you're misjudging my motives. And that makes them very, very angry, as it makes any of us angry. So in the second example, I came along and I explained the child's brain to the child. And he's like, yes, that's what it feels like. It's like, I want to get all this stuff out of my brain and I'm afraid I'm going to forget. I'm not just trying to be rude. And so their next question, after they feel kind of understood and affirmed, is, so what do I do about that? And see, that's where we often struggle, is that we just go to a consequence. Hey, cut that out right? That's the red, yellow, and green behavior charts in school that never work with the strong-willed child because they're just on red every day and they begin to give up. And so what they want to know is, well, what do I do about that? So one, I affirmed them because they do have a good brain. And I just said, hey, you're going to struggle in this area, which is true. I don't even have to put a diagnosis on that, right? I'm just letting them know, here's how your brain works, and you're just going to struggle in this area. So here's the tool. Every day when you walk into my class, I'm going to give you 3 talk tickets. Imagine this is just like a ticket, 3 talk tickets. Here's what I want, Jacob. Every time you get one of those amazing off-topic ideas, because you know they're always off-topic, I want you to hold up your talk ticket, and I will either say, hey, go ahead, redeem one of your talk tickets, share your amazing off-topic idea, or I'll say, hey, I believe you can hold it to after class. Or I give them a little notepad to write their ideas down on, and they put it in a little box on my desk that has a big light bulb on it for ideas. And then every day after recess or lunch, I pick a couple of those pieces of paper out of that desk and I get to read that child's ideas, right? And I get to affirm them and say, hey, this is a really cool idea. I love the way Jacob's brain works. And now instead of the child who's always getting in trouble because he blurts out and he doesn't follow directions, I just created a success. I would write that phrase down. I want you creating successes for your kids, because if you don't create successes, they will literally be in trouble all the time. They will begin to internalize, I'm a bad kid, I'm a dumb kid. At home, if they have a more compliant sibling, they're going to internalize, they're the black sheep of the family. Nobody likes me. Everybody's always on me. And they begin to internalize that. You don't want that. And so in this case, when that child holds up that talk ticket, see, I gave them something physical to do instead of, hey, don't blurt out. Well, as soon as you tell someone not to do something, they're going to do it. But I gave them this. And then after class, I get to say, hey, Jacob, you know what was really cool? Back in math class, you wanted to blurt out. You even started to blurt out. But then you know what you did? You held up your talk ticket. That's called self-control, my friend. Fist bump. Nice job. Lots of affirming of these kids for when they make good choices. I want more of our energy going to creating successes and then saying, hey, nice job. Well done. By the way, praise for strong-willed kids. Even in matter of fact, don't make a big deal out of it, right? No big like, I'm so proud of you for the choice that you made. Ugh, right? That's too much pressure on them. It sounds fake and condescending. Like we're like, oh, we never thought you'd actually make a good choice, so we're going to throw a party. No, none of that. Just keep it even and matter of fact. So these are kids who are going to struggle with some of these things. Here's another one, anxiety. When you have a very busy brain, usually anxiety in these kids. Now, in a little while, I'm going to share an anxiety example of how to handle that. But just know that comes from not feeling in control of things. It's the unknowns. Sometimes poor planning to us. What's the plan? Controlling others and bossy, right? Many of you have kids who control others. They control conversation. Some of your kids on the spectrum that struggle to connect with their peers, right? Because they're better with like little kids and animals and older kids and adults, but kids their own age, they struggle to connect with. Well, what happens? They'll control the conversation. They'll repeat the same things over and over and over again. Why? Because that gives me control. Because a normal conversation with another human being is a lot of unknowns. What are they going to ask me? What are they going to say? I don't know how to reply to that. So if I just dominate conversation, that's why they're doing it. Your kids aren't doing things most of the time. They're not doing it just to be a jerk. They just are struggling. And if we get to the root, we can give them tools to help them. It's why you can't play board games with your kids, because they're going to change the rules of the game, cheat, or quit. Is that because they're poor sports? No, it's because I don't feel like I'm in control of anything in my life. And so if I lose, that makes me a loser. So the idea of cheating is you're controlling the outcome of the game. If I quit, that means you don't win, I don't lose. See, the root of this is not being a better sport. The root of this is confidence. Because if I'm confident and I feel good about myself, well, then I can lose because it doesn't hurt my sense of self, right? So just recognize that. This is why some of your kids carry around stones or acorns in their pockets. And you're like, oh, why'd you leave those in your pockets? Because I put them in the washing machine and now they're all over. because I have one thing to control in my life. I don't get to control what I eat, all these other things in my life, but these acorns, these stones, I can put them wherever I want. That control thing, we're going to hit on in just a few minutes, why this is so important. It's why they enforce justice, right? That's not fair. Why? Because fairness is about creating equilibrium and things being in order. That's not right. It messes with them inside. Changes in plans. They get disappointed by little things, difficulty organizing thoughts and writing. All of these things come from that kind of brain. And again, I don't really need the diagnosis. I just want to know how their brains work and what they struggle with. And then I can give them tools to deal with that specific issue. The one final one is meltdowns are usually over little things, not big things. Here's why. If something big happens, right? If the school were to catch on fire, your big emotion kids and strong-willed kids would probably be the calmest ones in the school, because they'd probably be like, hey, Mr. Principal, Mr. Teacher, Ms. Principal, Ms. Teacher, whoever it is in your school, listen, you guys need to get out of the house, out of the school. I've got everything taken care of. Already called 911. I'm good. Because the bigness of that situation fires their brain, stimulates their brain, which actually helps them focus better. But little things going wrong, right? Like their mac and cheese isn't made the right way. By the way, it's why they eat the same thing and they wear the same clothes every single day, the same hoodie sweatshirt, because they want that order, right? But when little things are off, it really frustrates them. So that's one piece of the brain. Here's another one. We just mentioned it, the need for brain stimulation. Many of your kids don't get enough dopamine or blood flow to the brain. Their brains are physiologically understimulated. So what are they looking for? Stimulation, brain stimulation, intensity. So here's how we see that. All the fidgeting, tapping pencils, bouncing legs, all those fidgety things are just keeping the brain awake. Actually really helpful tools when you can use those to your advantage at homework time. They're moving constantly. The struggles with focus and attention, brain stimulation. Sibling issues, boredom or resentment toward their sibling who's like so good at everything. But they get bored and then they pick on their sibling because they were bored. That's a brain stimulation issue. Arguing like attorneys. Why do they argue like an attorney? Part of it is because when they can push your buttons and you react, you give them a lot of intensity, right? You better stop that. You're not going to talk to me that way. Well, what happens? That feeds my brain. And now all I did was poke my brother. And now my brother's upset, my mom's upset, and my dad's upset. I just got 3 people upset and they're giving me all of their intensity. And all I did was look at my brother. See, that feeds my brain in a very negative way. And that's why I like, and I encourage you, give your kids positive intensity. When they do things well, I create the successes and it begins to change their brain. They're always going to do things the hard way. It's going to irritate you because you live in Northern Virginia and you don't have time for them to be stove touchers, but I want you to create time in your schedule. I want these kids to learn how to touch that hot stove. I want them to do things the hard way because that's how they learn best, because they want to own it themselves. Is why they are impulsive. It's why they procrastinate, because if you procrastinate, you wait till the last minute, it creates an adrenaline rush, which brings blood flow to your brain and actually helps you concentrate. It's also why they work in spurts. So that's the second part of it. And we're going to hit on that in a few minutes. Now, third part of it, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but it would be sensory issues. Many of your kids are they're hypersensitive. They think things are too loud, lights are too bright, right? Things smell, they're super sensory. And then some of your kids are hyposensitive. So they're always kind of pushing against things, right? They want that feeling of pressure. And you'll see them, they want to wrestle a lot. Some of these kids, if you notice, when they get upset, they'll hit, they'll even bite. And some of that is a sensory seeking tool. That's why I like having an obstacle course in your backyard, in your basement, things they have to crawl over, crawl under, right? Because that feels good on their bodies. And that's why martial arts and swimming, gymnastics, hockey, a lot of those sports and activities are really, really good for your kids. So with that being said, that's kind of the groundwork, and I'll come back to that. So let's start going through the ways to de-escalate situations with our strong-willed kids when they're getting upset, the kids with big emotions. So here's a really cool mindset shift that I want to give you this week and probably this afternoon when your child comes home from school. By the way, when they come home from school or you pick them up, if your kids don't like school, don't ask them how their day went, right? Because like, hey, how'd your day go at that place where you're on red on the behavior chart? Sometimes you feel stupid, even though you're the brightest kid in the class and you're on red on the behavior chart. How was it today? Right? There's a lot of parental anxiety dumping all over your child because I want to know that you did well, right? Instead, some of your kids after school, they just need quiet. When you pick up, just give them quiet. Let them listen to some music, something on their earbuds, and they don't want to talk. They are so overwhelmed, and that's why they usually save the meltdown after school for whoever picks them up or whoever they see first. So you could do that for little kids. First thing after school when they come home, treasure hunt. Hey, hid your favorite toy in the backyard. Bet you can't find it in the next 3.5 minutes. Kids love treasure hunts, and it gets them outside. It gets them moving, doing something rather than talking about school and sitting down and starting to do homework. I like the physical movement and being outside. Do that as long as you can before the cold really hits. The other one I like for older kids, middle school kids, because here's middle school conversation. Hey, how was school today? Fine. Got any homework? Nope. Did it in study hall. Well, they just lied to you. They're going to wait until you go to bed and do it really late at night. A cool way to engage and bond with your child after school is to say, hey, something happened to me at the grocery store. I'm curious, what would you do if you were in my situation? Because kids are at school all day, being told what to do, literally all day long, following specific directions, things that they're not necessarily good at. And now you just ask them for their opinion about something. That'll get them to open up a little bit more. So here's what I want you to think about. When kids start to melt down, what happens is our first thing we go to is we try to get them to calm down. And I don't know if you've found this in life, but one of the most irritating and infuriating things a person can ever say to you in life is, you know what? You just need to calm down, right? That's infuriating. You're like, you know what you need to do, right? So I want you to shift your mind, because here's why they're getting upset. And here's what's going on. Something is out of their control. The reason you are taking time out of your busy day to watch this webinar, to go through this, is because what's striking the anxiety in you is you feel like you're out of control because you're a good, smart parent, and yet you have a child who is having these big meltdowns, and some of them are even becoming physical and intense and violent, where you have kids who struggle with other things. Well, that feels like it's out of your control and you don't know what to do, right? And so why you're here is you want to get some measure of control back in your home so you can have some calm and peace. So I want the mindset to go, when you walk into that room, from I just need to get my child to stop melting down. This is where I want your mind to go. I want to give my child control over something small in this moment. Because if we, and I'll do examples on this, let me roll through the concepts first, and then I'll put it together. When I walk into that room, I'm not looking at an overly emotional child who I need to calm down. What I'm looking at is a child who feels like everything's out of control. And if I were to give that child something he or she was in control of, that will begin to calm that child down. I hope that makes sense. So, and then look, many of you asked beforehand, does this work for our neurodivergent children? Does it work with kids with ADHD? Yes. This is everything we do is kind of especially for those kids, those really intense kids. So let's give them back sense of control. Number two, I want you to learn how to control yourself first. We could spend an hour and a half, we could spend a day and a half, 3 days on this one. Because if we can't control ourselves, or if your spouse cannot control himself or herself, this will not work. Because when we come into the room and we're all upset, I can't believe that you would be doing this, that escalates situations. It provokes kids to anger. So I don't have time to do all of this, right? But what I would tell you, what I would give you this week is to try this. You walk in a situation, just try this sometimes. Sit. Just sit in the midst of the situation. because we walk into it and then our body posture starts adding, right? As a guy, as a father, I used to come in, you're not going to talk that way to your mother. That always escalated, right? That never calmed the situation down. So I would come in and I began sitting, because sitting says I'm in control of myself. I would start using an even matter-of-fact tone. And I do want to hit on tone of voice. I hope this does not offend anyone. I've worked with now 1 million families. I'm just going to be blunt with what I've observed and what I know. I came from a very authoritarian home where my dad was career military and used fear and intimidation, my way or the highway approach. So guess what I grew up and did? Same thing with Casey, our son, when he was little. It doesn't work. It escalates situations. And so I think what's happened in our society, we've swung a little bit too far back to the other side, where we're talking now to our kids in this voice and they don't respect it. And I know this will sound harsh to you, and I don't want to be harsh with you, but I want to get this. I really want you to get this because this is really important. That really soft tone of like, if you tell a strong-willed child, a strong-willed 4-year-old, you know what, mommy really needs your help. Strong-willed child's going to look at you thinking, you know what, mommy's going to have to get some help from someone else because it ain't coming from me. Right there, they're 4 going on 34. They hear that, sweetie, baby, mommy needs your help. They hear it as condescending and they hear it as weakness, and they don't respect that tone of voice. It sounds unstable to them. It sounds like you're pleading with them. And so I want to be gentle with kids' hearts, but I don't want to always be gentle and entreating with my tone of voice. I prefer an even matter-of-fact voice, because the even matter-of-fact voice, which I will model through all of our examples today, says, I'm in complete control of myself. You can trust me. I'm not going to blow up on you. I'm not going to get super emotional. I'm not going to escalate things. You can count on me. So I talk to, and I'm very serious about this, when I'm giving instructions to a 4-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 24-year-old, same tone. I talk to them like they're adults, because that also communicates, I believe you're capable of handling this. And it is a very calming voice to these kids. So for some of you, it's going to sound very cold. And I want you to begin practicing, because you're in traffic for hours a day. Practice while you're in traffic using this tone in different situations. It is extremely important. So I want you to learn how to control your own emotions, your own anxiety, your own control issues first. Otherwise, you'll provoke them. Number 3, and again, I will put this together in some longer examples. Motion changes emotion. One of our favorite phrases is motion or movement is a tool we use to help a child calm down. When a child is getting upset, I like giving them a mission to do, something they're in control of. Quick one. This is our little townhouse out in Loudoun County. Kid comes into my room after school. We used to have after school camps. We didn't call them social skills camps. We called them Lego camps. Why? Because all these kids wanted to come to a Lego camp. They didn't know we were working on different things with them. It was kind of like play therapy without them knowing it was therapy. They were just in a home with all these other kids who were like them, building with Legos and fighting with each other. So anyway, they were actually very good together when I kept their brains focused. So a kid comes in and he starts bossing me around. And I remember thinking like, hey, stop it, you bossy little jerk. I didn't say that, but I thought it. And then I thought, oh, this kid feels like he's out of control. So I said, oh, Jimmy, I need some help. I've got a broom that's broken down in the basement. If you could go find that and find some duct tape down there, if you could fix that broom for me, it would really help me out. So what happened? He comes at me with a bossy, demanding tone, starting to get amped up. And instead of saying, you're not going to talk to me like that, young man, I gave him a mission. I gave him something he was good at doing. Write that one down, please. Give your kids things that they're good at doing. So he was good at fixing things. Now I just gave him something he was in control of. So he comes back upstairs holding the broom. I was like, dude, how'd you do that? Because I couldn't even fix it. Now all the bossiness is gone because he's in control of himself. So I gave him motion, movement, right? Here's what doesn't work. Lots of words. I'm not a big fan of talking a lot to these kids. You've seen this. When they are upset, if you talk too much, it will make them even more upset. They get furious because they can't process words when they're upset. And it's too much. So I'd encourage you, not a lot of words. I also don't like this. And this will rub you some of you the wrong way, but I don't like talking about their emotions in the moment, right? And neither do you. If you're a mom and you're having a bad day, and at the night you both get home from work or whatever it is, and your husband's like, honey, do you want to talk about your emotions? You'd be like, yeah, here are my emotions, anger and resentment towards you. No, right? It's just in the moment, I don't even know what the emotions are. Here's what the strong-willed child or your child on the spectrum is looking for. They don't necessarily need to identify their emotions because half the time they can't anyway. I don't know. My job as the adult is to slow my world down, to control myself so that I can look in this situation and know he's frustrated. She's disappointed, right? She's overwhelmed. She's anxious. See, I can begin to identify their emotions. They're not, what they need is not to identify their emotions. They need to know what to do with their emotions. See, talking about your emotions endlessly, man, it's just frustrating. Everybody knows I'm pretty frustrated right now. What I need is, what do I do with that? So that's where the motion changes emotion comes in. I'll do some examples. Give me just a minute. And one more thing, and then we'll do the examples. Intensity. Intensity is really important for these kids. For those of you who have kids who have been adopted, who maybe have been in foster care or have some attachment issues, and this is all of your kids, but for them especially, this is important. These kids associate your intensity with connection. See, they when you put everything down or your spouse comes in a room, how many times do I have to tell you? Well, that's not ideal, but here's what they know. When my mom or my dad is yelling at me, at least I'm important enough to be yelled at, because in your marriage, the worst thing is not if you two are arguing. It's if you're apathetic toward each other, because now guess what, honey? I don't even care enough about you to argue with you. Right? Does that make sense? But when I'm giving you some intensity, and here's the hard part for these kids, they don't distinguish between negative attention and positive attention, because really what they want, what their brains are craving and their hearts is intensity, because that means I'm important. So that's why giving them positive intensity is so important. So quick example, you've got a little kid and he made and he or she made an paper airplane and flew it. It didn't fly right. So what's this child going to do? He's going to go over, pick up his airplane. Stupid airplane. This is the dumbest airplane. He's going to crumple it up and throw it on the ground. And one of your thoughts, because in the question, someone asked, what do I do with a meltdown when they melt down over seemingly trivial things, right? So a couple things about that. We already mentioned little things really mess them up. And two, it might be trivial to you. It will be, but it's not to them. And so what every good mom and dad does is they come in the room and say, oh, honey, that was a really good airplane. Wrong thing to say, because here's what they're thinking. Duh, if it were a good airplane, it would have flown right. You're stupid, right? You can hear that, can't you? Right? And then we get all offended because they're being disrespectful. Here's what I'd rather do. I walk into that room, that child's fuming, their face is all red. Stupid, dumb airplane. And I know it hurts you because they beat themselves up a lot. And they're throwing this little piece of paper on the ground. Don't try to calm them down. My first thing is I give them intensity. You know what? If I were you, I'd be frustrated too. You spend a lot of time trying to build that paper airplane, didn't fly right. That's frustrating. Let me stop there. I'll add to it in a second. That is very calming. It is that intense validation that what you are feeling is right. See, look, I'm going to be a little tough on you. Typical dynamic in the home tends to be that a husband, because we're immature men, I put myself in there. I didn't really grow up till I was about 45, right? We're immature. And so when our wives get upset, what happens? We come in, oh, honey, there's no need to be upset. Everything's okay. It's because we live in denial. We don't need to know how to deal with your emotions. And we feel like our job is to fix your emotions when it's not. All you want is what? Honey, if I were you, I'd be frustrated too. We've got 3 kids. You're married to me. You should be upset, right? That validation is what you want. But moms, I will challenge you. You often turn around and do the same thing to your kids. Oh, honey, there's no need to be upset. That was a good airplane. You just did the same thing to your child that your spouse does to you oftentimes, right? And so you don't have to fix their mood, right? Let go of that. You don't have to fix it. I want to give them tools. And so the first thing I do is validate and say, if I were you, I'd be frustrated. You should be frustrated. Why? Because they put a lot of time. That paper airplane was important. They built it with their own hands. They had a vision of how it was going to fly. And then it didn't work out. And now that's going to ruin the whole afternoon because I really wanted to build an airplane that flew 40 feet because Tommy at school had one and his flew 35 feet. And I wanted to prove that mine was. Can you hear when they get upset? Can you hear that? Right? They're amping up all those things. And so when I validate that, right, that's really important. And so here's what I do next. I validate. Oh, if I were you, I'd be first. Listen, I need to go to the bathroom. When I get back, let's problem solve. Let's come up with a different plan. Let's come up with a different idea. Let's figure this out together. So I give them space. That's the fifth thing. First thing, give them back control of something. Second, control yourself first. Third, motion changes emotion. Fourth, give intensity. Use that to your advantage. By the way, we'll do physical intensity in a minute. And then number 5, space. Give them some space. Nobody likes to be watched while they're in a bad moment, right? When you're really frustrated at home, you don't want you don't want, like, when you're frustrated, you don't want your 3 kids and your spouse stopping everything they're doing and staring at you, right? Because you already feel ashamed of what you just did, your own little meltdown that you have as a dad. When I used to have big meltdowns, I was always ashamed. I didn't want everybody in the family looking at me like, hey, what's going on with dad? So rather than stand there and look over this child at that moment, I validated, I went to the bathroom, and then I came back, and that gave him a minute or two to calm himself down without someone staring at him when he's at his worst. So does that make sense? Let's put this together. I'm going to do a couple examples of this. So very common one. This was very common in our home, which was I would walk into the house or into the room and I would hear my son yelling at my wife. And obviously that's a trigger for me. You've got to deal with your own triggers. So what happens? I come in the room, Casey, hey, how many times have I told you you don't yell at your mother? And then I would start laying into him for all kinds of things. You know what? You leave your Legos all over the floor. You don't get your assignments done. How are you ever going to be successful in life? And here's something I want you to caution you about, and you may have to talk to your spouse about this. I didn't like Casey when he was little. I didn't, because he was really, really difficult. And I get it. Your kids are difficult. They make just about everything really, really challenging, even simple things. But I didn't like him. What I realized was he was just like me. And that was part of what it was, because I didn't want him to grow up and make the same mistakes that I made. So I was extra harsh toward him. And when he would do something egregiously wrong, like yelling at his mother, I would use it as an opportunity to lay into him, because that was my resentment coming out. And I want to caution you about watching that resentment coming out, because that will destroy your relationship and sabotage every one of these interactions. You're going to have to learn how to accept these kids as they are and learn that they're not always just being jerks. And they're going to be fine when they're in the adult world. Some of your kids' childhood is just very, very difficult for them. But you've seen this. When they are in the adult world, they're often awesome. And other people say, we love having your daughter at our house. And you're like, seriously? Keep her, right? Because they're better at that. And that's why I often give these kids grown-up jobs. I would write that down. Give them more responsibility, not more chores, not more arbitrary, stupid little chores. Sorry for that, but most of our chores, they're not going to work with a strong-willed child. I give them higher jobs, adult-type jobs to do, because they tend to do those better, and that's creating success. But so I would come in, and I had all this resentment toward him, and I would lay into him. Then I would escalate things. No, keep it up, young man. You already lost your video games for 2 weeks. 1 week, you want to make it 2? And the strong-willed child's going to be like, let's just make it 4. Because they know you can't take away their video games for a month, because you rely on them too much to keep them occupied. And you know that's true. No blame and judgment in that. It's just how it works. And then I would say things like, one more word, young man. And he, of course, would say, word, because I was escalating. And I would keep going. You know what? Keep it up. all that talking is escalating. I could see my son's face was all red, and I feel ashamed to this day about it. His face was all red, and I would keep pushing. Why? Because I wanted him to get so angry that he'd go upstairs, call me a name, slam his bedroom door so that I would feel justified as the dad when I walked downstairs and said to my wife, "Did you hear what your son just said to me?" See, I use that as cover because I couldn't control myself. And I needed my son to get upset like that because then it would justify the fact that I couldn't control myself. No blame, no guilt. But this was what I was really saying to my son. Son, I need you to behave and do exactly what I tell you to do, because if you don't behave, I'm not sure I can behave, and you do not want to see me angry. Right? My behavior became very dependent on my son's behavior, and we don't want that. So, how are we going to do this differently? Let's put these different things into practice. So, I hear my son's yelling at my wife. It triggers me. My first thought is, I got to control myself, control my tone. I walk into that kitchen. Remember, we've got giving him something he's in control of. Motion changes emotion, a little bit of intensity and some space. Hey, Case, hey, I can tell you're frustrated. Listen, I got a football. I'm going to go outside. When you're ready, if you want to come play catch with me, I'd love to help you with whatever you're struggling with. I walked into the room. I'm not addressing the issue right away. Before you discipline, you have to de-escalate. It doesn't work in the moment, right? You need to watch your mouth right now, young man. When has that ever worked in the history of the world? It never does, right? So I walk in and I hold up something because I don't use a lot of words often. Over time, it just became, I'd hold up the football, a nonverbal. I'm inviting my son to come do something with me, and I'm giving him some space. Here's another one. I walk in. Hey, Case, I can tell you're frustrated. Listen, I'm going to go in the living room, dump Legos out. When you're ready, if you want to come build a spaceship, it'd be really cool. I'll help you with whatever you're struggling with. See, the tone is not like, you better cut that out. I'm inviting him to do something with me. Now, you can't always go outside or stop because some of you have multiple kids. It's not like you can drop everything. You could do this, though. Hey, Jacob, so you're in the kitchen. Two of the kids are squabbling. One's melting down. The other one, you got lucky and he's just sitting doing his homework, right? And so you can't just go outside. But this one child's getting upset. You say, oh, man, come here. If I were you, I'd be frustrated too. Listen, could you do me a favor? Could you go in the pantry, get me the spaghetti sauce? Could you get that top off for me? What did I just give him? I gave that child something he's in control of. Does it change the whole situation? No, but it helps to de-escalate us and get us to a different spot. So now let's kind of follow through with this. I'm sitting outside. I see my son come walking out, or I'm in the living room and I just start sitting on the floor. Because again, watch my posture. I'm sitting on the floor, not standing in the kitchen with my arms across my chest or on my hips, waiting for him to obey me. I'm leading that child. I'm leading. I want you to learn to lead your child to a calm place. You don't make them get calm. You lead them to a calm place. So he comes walking in, and now what happens? We start building. We start playing catch. There's 100 of these. I can go outside and start drawing with sidewalk chalk, right? That's how I learned how to calm kids down at our house. We had a townhouse right in Ashburn. And so there's this little boy, and he would scream like extreme meltdowns. And he would go out on our front steps and scream like he was being murdered, right? So all the neighbors could hear, and just sing, Max, calm down. Max, stop. Max, do you want a treat? Right? None of that worked. What worked was one day I walked out and I sat 2 steps below him, and I just started drawing on our front steps with sidewalk chalk. And about 30 seconds later, he stops the screaming, and I feel his nasty little warm breath on my neck. And he says, and he had a little speech thing. He was like, Mr. Cook, you don't know how to draw. Well, am I going to get offended by that? No, because he's an upset kid. He's just a kid. And I said, I really don't know, Max. Max, could you show me how? I gave him something he was in control of and something that he was good at, and he instantly calmed down. And now while we're drawing with sidewalk chalk on my steps, guess what we get to talk about? Hey, Max, what's going on back there? What's going on? Mr. Cook, I don't like it when Joey, he took my Legos and I don't really, right? And he started getting, and I was like, okay, I get that. I'd be frustrated too. I don't like people taking my stuff. So Max, what are we going to do next time? Right? I led him to a calm place. I gave him something he was in control of. He had some motion and some movement rather than just sitting him down. And here's another one. If you want to add to our 5 things, let's make this a 6th one. No eye contact. I tend not to give kids eye contact when they're really upset. For this reason, when kids are melting down, they're totally out of control. They're usually embarrassed by what they're doing. And that's when we get down and we look them in the eyes and they're ashamed and they're embarrassed. And so I tend to do things when I'm playing catch, when I'm building with Legos, when I was coloring with Max, when we're going for a drive. That's why you have such good talks with your kids in the car. Why? Because you're not sitting there. Kids, we need to have a family meeting and talk about our behavior. No, I'm next to them. And so there's no eye contact. I know that'll freak you out, but please practice that a little bit and see how it goes. I give eye contact to kids when they do things well. Hey, you know what? That was a good choice, my friend. That shows me you're growing up. Fist bump. But when they're upset, no eye contact. So watch. Now when the child comes to me, now we're calming and de-escalating. Now I can say, hey, I know you know what you were doing was wrong. I know you know yelling at your mom was wrong. I know that brings dire consequences. So I'm curious. And I love that phrase, I'm curious. I'm curious, Case. What was going on back there that would lead you to yell at your mom? Hey, Max, what was going on inside our house that would lead you to screaming and throwing things on my floor? What was going on? I'm curious. See, it takes it out of that. You know what? We need to have a talk about your behavior. Explain yourself, right? What are they going to say? What were you thinking? I don't know. It's like everybody being mad at me. There's no answer for that. But I'm curious. I come alongside that child. And I'm like, I get it. You were upset. I'm not thrown off by that. I'm a grown adult. I don't take it personally. I'm just curious what was going on because I want to help you so that doesn't happen again, because when you do that, that actually hurts you. And here's something else that's really important, that human connection. See, usually when kids get upset, go to your room. There's nothing wrong with that. The only downside is we get in the habit of that. And now the child learns when they do something wrong, they're isolated, right? When I draw them to myself, here's what I'm communicating. Son, daughter, when you're at your worst, I can handle that. I don't need you. I don't need you to be on your best behavior. I'm a grown adult. You can trust me, right? When you're at your worst, right? Here's a great phrase. When your world is out of control, mine's not. I can handle it. That I could end this right there. And that would be your goal this week, is to really work on that, to become that person in that moment, to use these tools. So in that moment, you can get there. I'm not going to end. I'm going to do a couple more examples and then we'll do Q&A stuff. Anxiety issues. Let's do this because this is a big deal for your kids. Huge deal. So many of your kids are going to struggle with what? New experiences. Why? Well, because that's anxiety filled, right? And so I'll do a quick version. So I come home and I'm like, hey, son, daughter, you want to do Taekwondo this fall? And they're like, sure, sign me up. Come back a week later. I'm like, hey, we've got Taekwondo. Let's roll, get moving. What do I get? Oh, my stomach's just upset. Could we just stay? Could I just stay home tonight? I promise I'll go next week. No, here's what we're gonna do. If we leave right now, we'll go early. We'll get a Happy Meal at McDonald's. Everybody will be happy. Bribery never works. So then we do this one. You know what? I paid $175 for that class. Your little butt's gonna be there, right? As if your child's gonna say, Dad, I didn't know how much I didn't want to go, but I didn't know how much it cost you. But now that I know, I'm motivated to go. They don't care. You can't convince your kids. You have to lead your kids. So what's going to happen? I drag them out to the car. And we're going to fight the whole way. How many times you make everything? Why do you have to make everything so difficult? And eventually that child says, no, I'm not going. Taekwondo's stupid. You're stupid. Now here's your decision point, because you're looking at a child who is being defiant and being disrespectful. And if you don't control yourself, you're going to react immediately and say, you know what? You're not going to talk to me like that. You get in the car, you're going to go to your room, you lose your video games for 1 week, and it will escalate. And now you're going to have about 3 or 4 hours in the home where that child's melting down and the whole night's ruined. True? It's how it works, because that's how it worked in our home until I learned how to calm myself down. Here's why I want you to learn how to calm yourself down. And I want you really, really encourage you to learn how your child's brain, how their heart works. And I'm just going to do this very quickly. If this resonates with you, if you want more, you can listen. We have a thing called the Calm Parenting Podcast. It's on every platform. You go to celebratecalm.com podcast, you'll find it there. I have hundreds of episodes, and we go through all these different things. So if this resonates, go there. We have a special package called the Calm Parenting Package. It has 30 hours of instruction on every different topic you can imagine. There's programs for dads, for moms, for your kids to listen to. I'm not going to do a commercial for it, but if you go to celebratecalm.com/FCPS, Fairfax County Public Schools, FCPS, we have a special deal there for you because we used to live there and we like you all, and you live in a stressful place. If you need help financially, more help financially, reach out to us. You can reach out to me. It's Kirk, K-I-R-K, at celebratecalm.com. So done with that. So, but we'd love to help you any way we can. And definitely take advantage of the Parent Resource Center. The people there are phenomenal and will bend over backwards to help you. So in this situation now, I'm looking at this child, his face is all red, kind of screaming, I hate you, you're stupid. When I control myself and I look down at the child, here's what I know. When things don't make sense, it's usually anxiety, because anxiety is caused by unknowns, things you can't control. So two things I'm going to do here. The first one is, and this is super important in Northern Virginia, normalize anxiety. We are creating so much anxiety in our kids. Well, one, because they're under so much pressure where you live, right? And so you got to watch that in your home because they're going to feed off of you. But the other thing is we've made it like it's not something that's normal. I normalize anxiety. So I'm going to look down at my son who's screaming at me and say, hey, is your stomach a little bit upset? He's like, yeah, you know what? You're just nervous, right? Son, you should be nervous right now. And he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, you should be nervous. You are going to a new place where you don't know anybody. You don't know the instructor. You don't know if the other kids are going to pick on you. You're not always great at following directions, right? And multiple step processes are hard for many of your kids. So what if they're not good at it? And what if they fail? That's what's going on inside. See, inside their brain, it's alarm bells. I don't know if the instructor is going to be nice. What if the other kids are going to pick on me? What if I'm not good at this and I fail? And what if I get rejected by other people? And what if I want to quit and dad calls me a quitter? I'm not going. See, all that stuff builds up. And what they're looking for is an adult in our society and in our situation, a parent and teachers and all of us in society saying, of course you're nervous. You should be nervous. Going to new places where you don't know people should make your stomach a little upset. See, when I normalize it, I'm not excusing it. I'm normalizing it. Of course you are. Because watch what happens. Oh, honey, there's no need to be nervous. Your brother did this class and didn't have any issues. Well, now, if I shouldn't be anxious, but I am, then something must be wrong with me. Honey, you know what? That assignment isn't hard. Well, as soon as you say that, well, it's hard for me, then I must be stupid, right? So I like normalizing it. And this is my own opinion. And my wife is a therapist, so we're into therapy. But we're taking our kids to therapy for too many things, right? If you take a 12-year-old girl and you're like, oh, honey, let's go to a therapist every week and talk about your anxiety. You know what? You're going to create a really anxious kid, because what they need is some adults to say, that's normal. You should, middle schooler, you should feel anxious and awkward. It is the most awkward time of your entire life. If you didn't feel that way, that would be a little bit weird. See, when you normalize it, it's like, so I should be a little bit nervous? Of course. This is hard what you're doing. Does that make sense? I'm normalizing, not excusing. Then we always follow by giving tools. So the tool I want to give you for anxiety is this. Ideally, I would take my son or daughter 3 days ahead of time, a few days ahead of time, to whatever new activity they were doing. And we're just going to sit there and we're going to observe, because familiarity is really helpful for kids with anxiety. When there's no pressure to perform, when I'm not running late and rushing them in there, but honey, you'll have a good time. Go, you need to do this. Well, now all that anxiety, they're going to explode. And then I'm going to approach, and this is my favorite thing with anxiety. It's a great tool. Wherever your kids go, ask another adult to give your child a job to do, specific mission. So I go to Taekwondo a few days early. I'm like, hey, Mr. Taekwondo guy, this is my son. It's my son, Evan. He's going to be in your class on Thursday night. He loves helping other adults. Could you give him a job to do? And Taekwondo guy looks at my son. He's like, hey, Evan, psyched you're in my class. Listen, I could really use your help. Those are magical words for strong-willed kids. They love helping other adults. And he says, I need you here 5 minutes early. When you get here, you're going to rearrange the mat, set up the cones. You're going to help me out. You up for that? Most of your kids, for other adults, are like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. So fast forward 3 days, a week later, I come home. Hey, son, Taekwondo tonight. What triggers in his brain? Not all the unknowns, not all the anxiety that causes all of that. Oh, mom, dad, remember, Taekwondo guy said he needed my help. That makes him feel like an adult. He said be there 5 minutes early, so we need to leave like 3.5 hours early so we're not late, given Northern Virginia traffic, right? That's the anxiety. Leave a little bit early. Let them get there early when there's not a big rush, right? It's calming to them. And when they walk into that place, here's what they know. I've got my job to do. I'm not worried about the other kids. I'm not worried about all these other people. I already have a connection. Really important. I have a specific connection with that Taekwondo guy who said he needed my help. That relieves anxiety a lot. And now I've got my job to do. So at school, have a teacher, an assistant principal. Give your child a specific mission to, oh, honey, I really need you here early every day. Today, I need you to move the books from this side of the class to that side of the room. And then the next day, just make them move it back. They won't care. They just want to be busy. They want to have their brain focused on something they're good at doing. That will help with a lot of those meltdowns. And again, the issue with that is that meltdown was not about disrespect and defiance. It was purely about anxiety. And when you can relieve the anxiety, man, that is a really cool thing. Let me do one more example, and then Lisa, I'll open up to Q&A stuff. Morning routine. Even if you don't struggle with morning routine, what I wanted to go through is like 4 different tools that you can use in the morning to help these kids, right? Because I want your toolbox to be filled. You can't just do one approach all the time. Different situations require different things. So many of your kids, here's what morning routine feels like, right? It sounds like to them, you come into the room, hey, come on, get up, get up. I know you didn't sleep well because you have this really busy brain. You have a lot of anxiety. You didn't sleep well, so you're extra tired. Get up and let's go to that place where you're on red on the behavior chart. Don't feel good about yourself. Maybe sit alone at the cafeteria, right? And first, let's do the 4 or 5 things you at least want to do early in the morning. Get up and eat breakfast, which I know you don't like, right? And put on your new clothes and brush your hair and brush your teeth. Let's go, right? Of course, they're going to reject that. And so here are 4 different ways to kind of get your kids moving, to get them to do what you want them to do. So first one I'll do is connection. I love connection. See, relationships change behavior. Consequences don't really change behavior that well. Connection, though, a relationship, that changes behavior. So let's say one day you're calling up your daughter and you're like, hey, Grace, come downstairs. Come on, Grace, we got to go. And you don't hear a thing. Grace, come on. Hey, Grace, and feel your tone change. Grace, if I have to tell you one more time, which guarantees you have to tell her like 10 more times, Grace, Grace, if you are not down here in the next 3 minutes, you are going to lose. It's not my favorite thing to go to the consequences because many of the kids are just going to be like, I don't care, take them away. Here, I will bring you my toys in a box, give them away, right? That happens. So sometimes I walk upstairs. It's a pain. I get it. You're tired. And I walk into my daughter's room and I say, hey, honey, I'm tired too. I don't really want to go either. Let's just go. On the way, why don't we talk about the next play date you're going to have with your friend, Sarah? Right? On the way, why don't we do this? Look, this will sound like bribery, and sometimes it is, but it's really not. It's connection. Hey, honey, I'm tired too. I don't really want to go. Let's both go. And when we're done with this appointment, maybe we'll stop by Dairy Queen, right? Because they have organic grass-fed smoothies now. They don't. But you can tell yourself that. But the whole idea was I connected with her. Rather than the face-off standing in her door, honey, I've told you 14 times to come downstairs. With my son in the morning, you know what I did? I'd go and I'd sit on the edge of the bed. I know he didn't want to get up in the morning. So sometimes I'd compliment him on something he'd done the previous day. Sometimes it's hard to find with strong-willed kids, but I'd find something because that starts the day in a pleasant way. Sometimes it was connection. Casey was into blues music from a young age. They're old souls. Hey, Casey, I downloaded some really cool John Lee Hooker stuff. You get downstairs in the next 12 minutes, we will blast that this morning. There's connection. Let's do tools. Here's one of my favorite tools. I give kids tools to succeed. Try this. You're going to laugh at this and dismiss it, but it will work and you should do it because I do weird things that work. Thank you for saying that, Lisa. I'm trying to keep an eye on it because I'm an ADD guy myself, watching like the chat room while I'm doing this, because that makes it more of a challenge because I like a challenge, but it's really hard to do. So Lisa, thank you for answering the questions there. So here's the one of giving tools. Tomorrow morning, try that, or Monday morning or Tuesday morning, try this, especially with a younger kid. Go in their room and say, hey, guess where I hid your breakfast? Outside. Bet you can't find it in the next 7.5 minutes. Here's why I like it. I just did something very different. I gave them a mission. Hey, bet you can't forage for your own food. I don't care if it's cold out. Your kids don't even wear jackets. They go to school in the middle of January in shorts and a hoodie, and you get all over them. Chill with that. They're not going to die. You're not in Canada, right? So, right. And so I wake them up. Hey, bet you can't find that. How many of you honestly have kids who would love to do a treasure hunt with their food first thing in the morning? And now they're outside. How many of your kids would love to eat outside by themselves? I'm not being funny with this. Watch what we just did. I woke that child up and I gave them a mission. I got them moving. They're out of bed now because they've got a mission. I get to forage for my food. I don't care if it takes some mac and cheese and throw it out on the grass and let them eat like cows out there. Who cares, right? They're eating their food. They're out there alone. You just created a success because they'll do it and they'll do it well. Instead of asking them, hey, do the 5 things that you really don't do well early in the morning, then I'll get frustrated with you and my tone will become sharp and then I'll take away your screens, right? Instead, I just created a success. He's awesome at it. And he's out there eating by himself. Look, honor and respect that. You don't have to eat every meal together. So, look, I'm a morning person. I'm up, I'm ready to go. I'm out hiking. I'm out doing whatever it is. Some people, my wife, and other people aren't morning people. My son is not a morning person. Guess what I don't do? When Casey and I get up early morning hikes together, because we get up really early, guess what we don't do? We don't talk. Why? Because my son wants to drink his coffee and I honor and respect that. It doesn't mean he's being rude, right? So your child, think about this. You're looking outside. Your child is sitting out with the chipmunks, eating his breakfast. He's happy as a clam. Then you and your neurotypical compliant kids are sitting inside enjoying breakfast for once in peace and quiet without your strong-willed child complaining that you didn't fix his breakfast the right way and I don't like this. You created a success. Why would you not do that? Right? And now, look, you get to praise him and say, dude, you found that way too fast. Tomorrow, I'm going to have to hide it somewhere else. I'm going to hide it in the neighbor's yard. Maybe on Friday, if you get up every morning and you're on time, right, every morning, maybe on Friday mornings, you can hide my breakfast outside. They'll get up for that. So mix it up a little bit. That's giving the child a tool to do it differently, creating success. Now let's do very quickly a tough one. That's going to be hard for many of you. Tough discipline, because I don't want to always be giving tools and giving it. I'm not giving in. But here's what I told my son. Hey, son, Casey, here's the deal. Carpool, we leave because I had to drive him to school because he got kicked out of schools often. He got kicked out of Montessori school. If you can't make it a Montessori, you have issues. But if you ever need anything, reach out to Casey. He works with us. Casey, CASEY, celebratecalm.com. Email him because he's just like your kids and he'll get you and he'll help you out with anything you need. Hey, Casey, here's the deal. Carpool leaves. I leave at 7:27 every morning. From now on, here's how it works. For every minute you are late, you're taking a minute of my time and you will choose to forfeit 10 minutes of your screen time that night. Seriously, Dad, you're going to take 10 minutes of screen time away from me for every minute that I take? That's not fair. And my response was, I don't play fair. I play to win. I don't do a lot of consequences, but when I do them, mine are meaningful, right? And my time is important. See, that's a self-respect issue. That is self-respect. My time is important to me. So you're going to be on time. So first morning, what happens? He gets in the car. He's 3 minutes late. I hold up my cell phone. He sees and he's like, seriously, Dad, I was only 3 minutes late. That's good for me. I was like, that is good for you, but you just chose, good language, you just chose to lose 30 minutes of your screen time tonight. Seriously, Dad, right? What do you think he said? Did he say, Dad, Thank you for being consistent, following through. It makes me feel safe as a child. Right? He didn't say that. He starts going, seriously, you're supposed to be a parenting expert. Why would anybody buy your materials? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Right? He's going to go down that path. The whole drive to school was awful. He was yelling at me. He was mad at me. Was he really mad at me? No. He was mad at himself because he knew that he made a bad choice. So I didn't react. I didn't say, if you would have gotten up on time, we wouldn't have to do this. When you discipline, no drama with it. I'm in control of myself. I'm not taking it personally. I'm a grown adult. He was a kid who made a bad choice, and now he's being held accountable, and he's not going to like it. Why would he like it? So he gets out of the car. Did he say, Dad, have a really wonderful day today? Of course not. He slammed the door as he walked off because he knew the headmaster was there. So I couldn't get out of the car and scream at him because the headmaster was there, and he was smart like that. So that night, I come home. He's on screens. I pop in his room. Hey, Case, just wanted to remind you, got to turn him off 30 minutes early. Again, seriously, are you really going to do this? Yeah, it's just the way it works. And the principle I use when I discipline, I don't make it personal. I don't go on and on, very few words, and I simply do what I said I was going to do. And I expect that my child is not going to be happy with it. And I don't need them to be happy with it. I expect the pushback with a strong-willed child. So that's a tougher way you can handle it. But I wouldn't go there first because your kids probably are just going to lose all of their screen time. The final one before we do Q&A is this: ownership. I give them ownership over how they get ready. Son, daughter, here's my goal this morning. The school bus comes at 7:27 a.m. I have one goal for you. I just want you on the school bus. How you get there, I don't care. I don't care what you look like, what you smell like. I don't care what's in your stomach. If you're smart enough to sleep in the clothes that you're going to wear to school the next day, it's brilliant. You can sleep until 7:26. Roll out of bed. Grab that Pop-Tart that you hid under your bed because I know you hoard food up there. You can run out to the school bus. You don't even have to have your shoes on. You can just put on your shoes while you're riding to school. I don't care. Now, do I care? Yeah, because I have control issues. I want them to get up early and get exercise and eat blueberries and avocado so their brain's ready to learn from the day. I want all of that. But the more you push a strong-willed child, the more they resist. And when I give them some ownership within my boundaries, they tend to step up. And they just do it. They just do it in a weird, awful way that makes me anxious. So what if he gets up at 7:26 and doesn't look nice? I don't care. You can wear the same hoodie sweatshirt. I don't care. Just be ready. And at the end of the day, when they made the school bus, I can say, this morning, fist bump, nice job making the school bus. Do I like the way they did it? No. But I relinquished control of that because they did make it. And they eventually learned that they need to eat breakfast because otherwise their stomach hurts in third period, right? That's giving some ownership over it. So let me just lay out the 5 things, kind of 6 we went. Shift your mindset from getting kids to calm down to giving them control of something. Control yourself first. Watch your tone of voice. Motion changes emotion. Give a mission. Missions are really important for these kids. Sometimes make it harder because these are really smart kids. Give them that, validate with intensity. Give them physical intensity. And give them some space to calm down. And the bonus one was just watch the eye contact. So, Lisa, questions. I know there's 100 things we didn't get to, but anything in particular that I could answer right now in our remaining 19 minutes?
Well, can we stick to eye contact for a second? We talked about the adult eye contact, but what about if a child is not giving you eye contact? Or what if a child is doing something else while you're talking to them? Those kinds of questions.
Totally. Don't take it personally. Please just relax with that. Please just relax with that. These are kids who are very sensitive kids. They are sensory kids. And the reality for many of our kids, including my son, was the only time he got contact from his father, from me, was when right? Because when do we give eye contact? Look at me because I never came home and said, look at me, just made a good choice, I'm proud of you. Don't worry about that. Most of our kids, look, all I want is the connection and for them to open up. And if it's easier for them to open up while they're building with Legos and while they're doing something else, please, I implore you, relax with that. Over time, as they get more confident, they'll look at you. But the other thing, Lisa, is that most of our kids are in trouble a lot. And so they know that. And this is related to that. They lie a lot. It's not an integrity issue. It's I have an impulse control issues. I did something wrong and now I'm in trouble. So what are they going to do? Are they going to, like, how many people in your own life can look you in the eyes and tell you that they wronged you or they did something wrong, right? We all kind of make up stuff. So don't be, I guess I'll leave it at that. Don't be thrown by that. I would actually encourage you have much better walks with your spouse, with your kids while you're going for talks, much better talks while you're going for a walk, while you're in the car, while you're playing catch, while you're cooking together. It doesn't all require eye contact. That'll come later, but just please let that go and tell your spouse, i.e. your husband, chill with that, or you're going to have your kids never look you in the eye contact, in the eyes, because they simply can't trust you because you're too intense in that moment when something's going wrong.
Okay, can we go back to Casey losing his online access? It sounded like from your description, what happened when he lost the access? Did he have a meltdown when you took it away? We have some families saying that they tried a similar consequence and their student just their child, sorry, just escalated and had a huge meltdown over, you have to give that back to me. You have to give it back.
Of course, I expect that. They're not going to say, you know what, fair enough, here it is. I wish we had 3 hours on screens. My encouragement with screens is this. If I had to narrow it down to 1 or 2 would be, for those of you with younger kids, delay as long as you can. Just delay as long as you can. Resist the peer pressure, be the mean parent, be the bad parent, because otherwise you're just going to get in this endless cycle of, no, you lost that. Can I have it back? Can I have it back? When do I get it back? What if I do this? Can I get it? It just becomes a nightmare. So if you can delay phones, everything, delay as much as you can. But here's the bigger point, which is how we ultimately handled it with Casey was this. And if you don't mind, Lisa, this will answer a lot of other questions. Kids, we all behave a certain way because it meets certain needs, right? When we eat emotionally, it's meeting a certain need in us, and we're trying to fill that need by doing things. Well, what ultimately changed for us, because Casey back in the day was Call of Duty 2, right? And so I was like, when we were kids, we played football, we were outside. One day I walked in and I used the I'm curious thing. And I said, Case, I'm curious. You play this a lot, which means it's meaningful to you. What do you get out of it? And then I listened to him without countering what he said and trying to prove my point, right? Without trying to convince him that video games weren't good for him. It's part of it. And here's what I learned and what I heard. When I play my video games, I'm in complete control of something. Think about that. Your kids, especially in Northern Virginia, look, you're a grown adult and you don't even feel like you're in control of your life, right? With the traffic, you live in a very political area, right? We're out in the middle of nowhere. There's very little pressure here. There are just potatoes around. And so there's balance. It's different. And everything's out of their control. Well, when they put that headset on, when they put on that screen, they're controlling it. That's huge. They're also connecting with friends. Is that the healthiest way? No. But when we were kids, we also had freedom to just walk out our front door and be gone for 3 hours without our parents knowing where we were. Your kids don't have that. So the way that they connect is through their video games. It's also brain stimulation. They're doing this, they're good at it. And so it immediately stimulates their brain. There's a challenge if I have to get to the next level. And here's the 2 that I really want you to focus on: competence and confidence. Many of you have kids who are very bright kids. They're just not good at doing school. They're bright, but they just don't do childhood well. They do adulthood. They're going to kill it in adulthood, but they don't do it well. But here's what they know. All day at school, it's a challenge for me. Social skills are a challenge for some of your kids. When I'm playing my video games, I kill it. I'm rock at this. I'm really good. How do you build confidence in life? It's not from people telling you you're so good. It's because you know inside. And these kids know when I'm playing that game, I'm really good. And so it's the one area of my life where I have control, where I'm connected in ways that I know how to connect to other people, when I feel competent and good about myself, and when I'm confident. And so watch what happens when we come along. You need to stop doing that. Well, you just ripped away from me the one activity that I feel really good about. So if you want to get your kids off of screens, migrate away from it, you're going to have to replace that. And what we use is something called mission and mentor. I want to find an area, I want to find an activity in which my child naturally excels and find opportunities to use those gifts, talents, and passions outside the home, at school, church, synagogue, in your community, in your neighborhood, accountable to another adult. Find a mentor, not an official mentor, another adult. And it can be as simple as, I would start with, find an older couple in your neighborhood, an old man, old woman in your neighborhood, and have them give your child, say, hey, I could really use your help. I'm old. I need some help changing my light bulbs. I need some help breaking leaves, whatever it is. If your child starts doing something for other people, they usually feel really good about themselves, starting their own little business, getting a job somewhere, volunteering at an animal shelter. I don't have time to do all that, but we call it mission, something they're good at. Feels good, it's within their control because I'm really good with animals. Volunteering down at getting a job at the veterinarian's office, whatever it is for little kids. I don't care if you have to pay a neighbor to give your child a job, right? I don't care, because what's going to happen? Your child's going to go down to the neighbor's house, and the neighbor always loves your child more than you do. I'm kidding, but they like them, and your child's going to be awesome, and they come back home feeling confident. And sometimes when they're around other adults can say, hey, how's school going, young man? They're like, well, I don't really like it. Yeah, I get that. And they'll start to encourage your child to do their schoolwork. And I'm not being funny with this one. Find an older couple, an older lady in your neighborhood who was a former teacher. I promise you, they will love hanging out with your strong-willed child, because your strong-willed child is great with adults and they're going to have a great conversation. And that older person will probably do homework with your child better than you will, because you're so anxious and controlling with it. But anyway, so Lisa, my answer to that long-term, the bigger picture is, when we start getting our kids doing other things where they experience confidence and competence and human connection, guess what they have less time for? Guess what they need less of? That's their screens. Start with one thing they can begin doing constructive and positive, because the more time they're doing those other things, the less time they need to be on their screens.
Okay, we had two parents ask the exact same question. One has a son and one has a daughter.
Okay.
And both of their kids insist on being the first in the family to complete everyday activity. Has to get dressed first, has to get in the car first, has to get into the house first. How do you deal with that without the huge accommodation?
Let me think on that one. That's very Northern Virginia. You're raising very driven kids, right? That's awesome. I think I take it, you know what? I think I would, I'd give them separate goals, in a sense of like, okay, here's what my mission is for you. Bet you can't get this one done. And then give a different mission to the other one. So the mission isn't just to get in the car first. Because look, if I'm a strong-willed kid, I'm just going to sleep in the car. I win, right? And I want to try to take it out of that competition. So Lisa, one of our phrases or concepts is space and place. So this is for all sibling issues. And it's related a little bit to the screens issue of, I want kids to feel confident. So some of it is, I want kids to have their own space and place within the family. And so I think I would handle it with, I pull the son aside, say, hey, here's my mission. Bet you can't get this done in the morning. Something using his particular skills that he's good at. And then I pull my daughter and I say, hey, honey, you rock at this. Bet you can't do this. And let's see, because what I want to try to do there is to see if both of them are successful. And it's a larger conversation that I have at the dinner table of, hey, here's what our family looks like. Mom, it's not always mom and dad, but mom or dad, whatever. But let's say it's mom, dad, Billy, and Susie. Is now I get to have honest conversations of like, yeah, here's what dad starts with, like, here's what I stink at in life. I'm not good at doing this. I'm really good at this. So guess what my job is? My job that I chose is something I'm really good at. So Billy, you're really good at X and Y, but you're really weak at A and B. And Susie, you're really good. So I'm normalizing the fact that you're going to be really good at some things in life. And there's some things in life you're just not going to be good at. There's no shame in that. It's just the way you're made. And to be successful in life, it is you take advantage of and capitalize on your strengths. So I think I would try to take it out of the competition and move it more into your unique strengths. And I may even challenge them as a brother and sister. Hey, look, you can spend your whole childhood trying to be first, right? And trying to outdo each other. It's kind of a waste of energy. But here's what I know. You both are competitive. You're both driven. Why don't you two start your own business? Why don't you do that together, man? You guys can make a killing. You put all of that energy into serving people, helping people, doing service projects in the neighborhood, man, you can change our community. You can make a lot of money doing that. So I'd reframe it for them, I think.
Okay, we talked a lot today about when the children are responding to us, but what if the child has big emotions when responding to a referee in a soccer game, when responding to a teacher, you know, that kind of big emotions?
I think that's going to happen a lot because they struggle. A lot of these kids struggle with sports, with losing, not feeling good. What popped into my head, Lisa, first was practice this. One of my favorite tools, discipline tools with kids is just role playing. Now they're going to hate it because it sounds boring and stupid and dumb, but I do it anyway. And I would role play. And I used to do this with kids in our home. I had several kids that played soccer and they were goalies. And when they got scored on, they would throw a tantrum and throw the ball back to the ref. And so I pulled them aside and said, here's what we're going to do. I want you to practice learning how to get scored on. You're going to practice losing because it's part of life and it doesn't make you a loser. But what happens, and I try to explain to child, because I was a goalie too. If you're a goalie and the other kids see you getting upset, you're no longer a leader, and the other team knows, they're getting under your skin. And I would play to the fact that most of these kids, your kids, are really good button pushers. They're good at pushing your buttons because they understand all of your buttons, and it's controlling your behavior. And I'd be like, dude, when you react on that soccer field or baseball field, everybody knows the thing just push your button. They're in control of you. That's not who you are. So I would take them to a soccer field and I'd literally practice. I'd shoot on them and I'd score. And I'd say, here's what I want you to do. You turn around. And if you want to mutter a couple little words and show your disappointment, anger, while your back is to everybody else, while you're going to get that ball in the back of the net, fine. But as soon as you pick up that ball and turn around, blank face, you're unmoved. You've got this. And you roll that ball back to the referee. I would physically practice these situations because role playing is practicing behavior. And I don't think there's any amount of talking like, son, you can't get upset when the ref does that. You know, the ref is the authority figure. I would actually maybe even talk to the coach and have the coach practice that and say, guys, here's what we do. We don't react on the field. You know why? Because that gives us more power over the other team. We don't react when we get to, now a lot of this is modeling. Look, I have to hit this. This is modeling. If that kid on the soccer field or sports field sees mom or dad reacting and getting upset in situations, it's just not going to work, right? You can't, I'm going to pick on dads because I'm a dad. You can't have dad flipping people off in traffic and getting upset all the time because things didn't go his way, and then turn around and tell your 7-year-old or 14-year-old, you just need to learn how to control your emotions. It simply doesn't work, and it's not right to do. So a lot of this will be modeling at home of, yeah, of course you're upset. Of course you're upset when you struck out. You should be upset. You know why? Because you're conscientious and you care about it. But I want to practice laying your bat down, walking back, because that says you're a powerful person. Is that going to work every time? No. Your kids are emotional. Look, I'll just be blunt. Some of these things are just going to happen and you can't do anything about it. And you're just going to be embarrassed as the parent. And your child's just going to have to learn the hard way that they get benched because they did that. And sometimes there's literally nothing you can do about that. And it's okay, because they're not going to be playing soccer when they're 27, right? And melting down over time. They're going to learn how to control themselves. But some of these things, I'll just be blunt and honest, you're just going to have to struggle through because it's going to happen. And your kids are going to get in trouble at school sometimes because they're going to blurt out and they're going to act silly, and so that other kids like them. Some of these things, breathe deeply and learn to deal with it in stride, but don't try to fix your kids their entire childhood. Some things they're just going to struggle with, and that's simply okay.
Real quickly, you mentioned chores, not to give them little chores, but give them big people responsibilities. Can you just give us a few examples of what you were talking about?
Yes, you don't have to do this, but I would. If you want to struggle with your kids for 18 years, getting them to do normal household chores, go for it, but they're probably just not going to do it. Here's what we came down to with Casey. Casey was horrible at home. Casey was not that great as a kid. He was great outside the home. So 3 things Casey started doing when he was about 10. 1, he liked outdoor work. To this day, he does outdoor stuff. So guess what? Instead of unload the dishwasher or do this, he shoveled mulch. He did outdoor stuff that he liked that was very physical. So guess what? I made that one of his chores. 2, he was really good at helping this older couple down the street. Look, the whole reason of doing chores is you want to raise your kids to be responsible, respectful adults. Well, cleaning your room has no relation to being a responsible, respectful adult. Casey's room was horrid when he was a kid. He lives about 7 minutes away from me. When you walk into Casey's home now, guess what the first thing he's going to, Dad, you need to take off your shoes. You need to take off your shoes in my home. You know what my response was? Seriously? Seriously? Right? Because he owns his home. So don't project out. Chores to me don't get stuck on chores. Get on the big picture. I'm raising a child who learns how to be responsible and respectful in the adult world. So he would go to this old couple's house and do anything for them. And they would tell me, Casey is amazing at our house. And so guess what? I made that. Look, I want to switch it from, well, I want an obedient child or a well-behaved child. That wasn't happening with my son. And it's not happening with your kids. I want a responsible child. He's responsible when in big situations. So that was 2. And then the third thing is he was an ice hockey referee at the Ashburn and Reston hockey rinks. He had to get up early on the weekends. He had to go there. He had to be on time. He had to clock in. He had to work hard. He had to fill out paperwork. He did all of those things really well. So you know what we shifted to? All these little things around the house that he's not motivated to do. And I know half of life is doing things you don't want to do. But when you're an adult, it's different because you own that house, right? Like cutting the lawn for me is big because I bought this house. I have ownership. When you're a kid, it doesn't mean don't give your kids chores, but I would give them some ownership over which chores they do, right? You don't have to do that, but it worked really well. And I get my focus from, I just need this child to follow all my directions to know, I want this child to know how to operate in the world well. I want him to know or her how to be responsible in big situations. Casey didn't do those household things well. In the real world, he's now general manager. He's working part-time. They made him full-time general manager. He works for me of the largest catering company in Jackson, Wyoming, Jackson Hole. Why? Because in the big situations, he does things well. He knows how to do it. He kills it. And so if you keep that larger goal, I think it will help you. I hope that makes sense.
So Kirk, thank you so much. We were not able to get to all the questions, but in the chat, I have Casey's email. So maybe we could get more questions answered. But again, I laughed out loud. I heard myself in some of your examples, very positive feedback from the participants. So I just want to say thank you, and that we will send the link out to all the families. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you, Lisa, and everybody at the Parent Resource Center. You're awesome.